The governor's objection to House Bill 2238 having been read, the time has now arrived for the House reconsideration of said bill. Is there a motion to reconsider? The Speaker recognizes Representative Wassinger.
Mr. Speaker, I move that notwithstanding the governor's veto of House Bill 2238, the bill shall be passed.
Does anyone wish to speak to the motion?
Mr. Speaker, this bill is simple, and we've debated this numerous times. It is consistent with Title IX, which has successfully given women opportunities since 1972. Let's not go back in time.
The Speaker recognizes Representative Susan Ruiz.
Once again, I will bring your attention to the fact that this bill is not about supporting girls and women in sports. You can say that all you want in your head, but that's not what it's about. It is about outright discrimination against trans girls, trans kids in general, really. If it was really about sports, then where are all the bills about actual sports for girls and actually supporting them and supporting them beyond high school so that there's parity in pay for them. We just had beautiful girls here that are in basketball, and yet they're paid way below men in professional sports. Where are we with that? So this to me tells me this is not about that. It is about discrimination against trans kids. Otherwise, if you look at all of the proponents that are outside of the state who come in across the US bringing these kinds of bills to all the legislatures across the country, these are organizations, look up their website and you will see all of the things that they are against, and they are against the LGBTQ community, and in particular, trans kids. That is what this is really, truly about. I asked you to embrace all of our kids, no matter who they are, where they're from. This bill is not embracing them. This is discriminating them. This is an attempt to erase them out of our own society. And I've said it, I don't know how many times, these kids are killing themselves. They're taking their own lives. At the end of last session, 2 months later, 2 kids killed themselves. And I heard from friends who knew the kids, that these kids followed us. They follow our laws. They're active, not just politically, but within their own communities. And when they see that their own legislature, when they look up to us, when they see us and they look at us as role models, they feel like if we can't count on them, I have no reason to live. And these kids kill themselves. So if you really, truly want to support kids, you will sustain the veto. Thank you.
The Speaker recognizes Representative Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. A couple years ago when we first started debating this, I talked quite a bit about my granddaughter who was then a swimmer at McPherson High School. She was in her freshman year. Now, of course, 2 years later, she's starting her junior swim season. And as such, she has set over 50% of the McPherson High School swim records for girls. Possibly by graduation, she'll own them all. She owns an AVCTL record and a Salina Aquatic Center record for girls. Her relay team won a state championship last May. You might say, well, she's doing pretty well. Top shelf swimmer. And she is, provided that she continues to have a fair and competitive environment. Here's a girl that started swimming competitively since she was 7 or 8. She gets up now as a junior at 17 years old. 5 o'clock in the morning, she drives to the YMCA, does a couple hours workout, goes to school. After school, she drives to Wichita to participate in the practice at the Wichita Swim Club. So all that hard work, and none of it really matters if she doesn't continue to have a fair, competitive environment. It's been stated that the bill's about discrimination. It has nothing to do with discrimination. It has everything to do with fairness. You have to understand how precarious these situations are, the championships for our female athletes. 2 years ago at state, my granddaughter took second in the 50 freestyle. I thought, that's very good. So I looked at the boys swim championships. The 60th fastest boy would have beat her and the first place finisher, who by the way now swims for SMU, by over a second. In what world is this fair? Florence Griffith Joyner is the world record holder for the 100 meters at 10.49 seconds. Who can beat that? Well, the top 20 NCAA men can. In fact, the Kansas high school record for high school boys is almost a quarter of a second faster at 10.27. The Texas high school record is 10.13 seconds. So Florence Griffith Joyner record could be gone like that if someone were to a biological male were to participate in a women's track event. So in what world is this fair? So we say, what about the science? Well, let's talk about that. The International Swimming Federation has embraced science, and they've issued a new rule. And basically, and this is from the New York Times, basically that rule is if you've not transitioned by the time you're 12 or reached the first stages of puberty, then you're not eligible for these premier events like Olympics and things like that. From the New York Times, more than 70% of FINA's member federations voted to adopt the policy, which was devised by a working group set up in November that included athletes, scientists, medical and legal experts. Also from the New York Times, peer-reviewed studies show that even after testosterone suppression, top-level transgender athletes retain a substantial edge when racing against top biological women. According to Michael J. Joyner, a doctor at the Mayo Clinic of Rochester, Minnesota. You may have heard that. Continuing from Dr. Joyner, men on average have broader shoulders, bigger hands, longer torsos, greater lung and heart capacity, and their muscles are denser. Second group, the governing body of World Athletics has banned transgender athletes from female competition. This from CNN. And quoting Sebastian Coe, the president of World Athletics, decisions are always difficult when they involve conflicting needs and rights between groups. But we continue to take the view that we must maintain fairness for female athletes above all other considerations. Continuing, Sebastian Coe said, we will be guided in this by the science around physical performance and male advantage, which will inevitably develop over the coming years. As more evidence becomes available, we will review our position, but we believe the integrity of the female category in athletics is paramount. So but for those of you who are tempted to sustain the veto, I have some questions. Just do a little introspection. Is there a point in this where you would no longer be comfortable with transgender athletes in female sports? Let's say when your daughter, your granddaughter, a constituent misses out on a scholarship, a state championship, or a place on the medal stand, are you still okay with it? Let's say your daughter, your granddaughter, constituent's injured in a basketball game when a 6'5", 250-pound male is swinging elbows under the rim. Are you still okay with it then? How about when your high school girls soccer team is humiliated by a team dominated by male athletes? You know, as assistant majority leader, I've had the privilege and honor of helping 3 classes assimilate now. And the very first session, we always talk about job description. And I distill it down to a very simple job description. Your job description is to represent your district. It's a complicated job, but the job description is simple. So each one of us has hundreds of these aspiring female athletes in our district, with each one with dreams bigger than the next, where they want to go with their sport, their chosen sport. So the final question then, considering that, will we choose to represent our district and those female athletes therein, or will we pledge allegiance to some orthodoxy? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Speaker recognizes Representative Stogsdill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Above and beyond everything else today in this vote that we're about to make, it is about discrimination. It's not about fairness in women's sports. And I checked yesterday with the Kansas High School Activities Association. I checked with them about 2 months ago, and I asked them, how many students are registered with your organization? 2 months ago, it was 92,000. And there were 3 boys transitioning to girls and 8 girls transitioning to boys. That's 1 out of every 10,000 athletes in the state of Kansas. I called them yesterday. There's 109,402 registered with the Activities Association. Same number of trans athletes, or trans students that are registered with that group. That doesn't even mean they're participating in sports. Second question I asked them was, how many complaints have you had about these trans students? 0. I said, then how many events have you documented where they have made an impact on a sport or even a single event? 0. And this is about fairness in women's sports? It's not. And we're willing to put a target on the backs of these kids because you think they're making an impact on women's sports. They're absolutely not. And let's go beyond that just a little bit. The last time we brought this up, all the chambers of commerce, certainly in the Kansas City metro area, which is, again, the economic engine of Kansas, came out adamantly against this bill. And they are adamantly against it this time around. It has the potential to have a devastating effect on our economy in Kansas. Ask the people in Georgia, ask the people in North Carolina if that's not true. We will lose companies. They told us 3 years ago or whenever it was, you pass this bill, we'll have no chance of getting the World Cup in the Kansas City metro. The World Cup people told them, you pass that bill the next day, you're off our list. This will cost us conferences. This will cost us conventions. This will cost us, heaven only knows how many companies where people have good policies for our LGBTQ community members. So don't say this is about fairness in women's sports. There's no impact on women's sports whatsoever being made by transgender children in the state of Kansas. But it will have a devastating impact on our economy. and it will destroy our reputation across the country as a place that's friendly to all people, inviting to all people, welcoming of all people. So I'm asking you, don't put Kansas in this position. Vote to sustain the governor's veto on this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Speaker recognizes Representative Woodard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Body, I just want to talk a little bit about the process because we've had this debate for a number of years going on, and once again, we find ourselves here again. As we have seen these bills pop up over the years, a coalition of us have worked tirelessly behind the scenes to work with so many of you. We've heard from so many of you that you are tired of voting on bills like this. And why is this the top agenda? We've had the discussion about why we wouldn't exempt elementary school from bills like this. Those amendments would have been rejected. We've talked about why not have amendments that would deal with fairness in women's sports pay. But of course, that wouldn't be germane to a bill like this. We've talked about what we can do to work with our governing bodies who have policies in place to see if those are up to your standards, but yet it's not good enough. We've heard and asked in every committee, every time this has come up, if there are examples in Kansas that this is an issue, if there are any athletes that have been overlooked or competed against for scholarships, and there's no evidence of this. How is this the top issue on your legislative agenda this year? The proponents for these bills had to fly individuals in from out of state to testify against these bills because no one in Kansas is having this impact on them. How much are those former athletes that are getting flown around the country to testify against these bills with their speeches that are the same in every committee hearing? How much are they getting paid? This isn't about sports. I've heard from so many of you in the hallways or out at dinners about how you're sick of voting on bills like this. Let's focus on things that actually help people. Where's the bill? If we want to give people a fair shot, where's our bills dealing with minimum wage? Where's our bills dealing with student debt? Where are the bills that actually impact Kansans? Let's reject this and once again stand with the people of Kansas. This was an issue in the governor's race, and guess what? Governor Kelly got reelected. Please vote to sustain Governor Kelly's veto. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
If there is no further discussion, Representative Wassinger, you may close.
Thank you all. Mr. Speaker, I close.
2 reminders. The first reminder, there will be no photography of the boards as we take this vote. The second reminder is that if you vote yes, you are voting to override the governor's veto. If you vote no, you're voting to sustain the governor's veto. The question arises on the motion of Representative Wassinger that notwithstanding the governor's veto, the bill be passed. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record the vote? The clerk will close the roll. Seeing 10 hands, the call is in order. Doorman will close the doors. Members will be in their seats. The clerk will call the roll.
Representative Heiberger, Representative Reese, Representative Thomas, Representative Shu.
The speaker excuses Representative Carlin. Representative Thomas votes aye. Seeing 10 hands, a call is still in order. Seeing 10 hands, call is still in order. Representative Heiberger votes no. Seeing 10 hands, call is still in order. Are there any explanations of votes while we're sitting here? For an for an explanation of vote, the speaker recognizes Representative Howerton.
So I've received several emails from citizens claiming that I hate the LGBTQ community and I'm dehumanizing children. That is not my mindset nor my intent. What we are missing today in our culture is the truth. Many years ago, after the birth of my third child, I suffered a very dark depression. From this pain and struggle, I learned that emotions, while they are very real and while they are very persuasive, are not reality. Today, we can choose to be whoever we want to be. That is the freedom granted to us in this amazing country that we live in. But regardless of who we choose to be, the fact still remains that biological women should not have to compete with the biological male in any physical sport. The truth is the biological makeup between a male and female is too different to make it fair. So today I am voting for women and for girls who deserve a fair competition.
For further explanation, the speaker recognizes Representative Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's been known for some time my position on House Bill 2238. I originally stated that I had some issues with the bill. And as much as I completely agree with some of the comments from some members of both sides of the aisle, there are things that I additionally disagree with. I don't believe that it's fair for young men and young ladies to compete in sports where there is a definite physical and biological difference. However, that being said, I have issue with those small children that will be included in this bill. I probably did more homework.
Representative, your time has expired.
Thank you. Anyway, that's the reason that I'm voting.
For further explanation of vote, the speaker recognizes Representative Chuck Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. It was said that 2 transgenders killed themselves this past year. On TV, I heard where 22 veterans kill themselves every day. And that hadn't even been brought up here on the floor. 22 every day. They say money will be lost because the NC2A will not come to Kansas. When did we start selling our morals? If they don't come, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
Are there any further explanations? Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It was verified in committee that no members of the legislature work for CASA, the NCAA, USA Swimming, or any other sports governing body. It is the purview of these organizations to set sports policies, many of which already have policies that are continually being evaluated. HB 2238 is governmental overreach, which is why I'm voting no. This is not our lane. We need to be in our lane and let the sports bodies continue to assess their policies to receive the fairest rules and regulations for all athletes without inspiring our children to kill themselves.
Are there any further explanations? Seeing 10 hands, call is still in order. Seeing 10 hands, call is still in order. Representative Stockstill for an explanation of vote.
This is a sad day for the state of Kansas and this chamber. We have put targets on the backs of some of our most vulnerable citizens. We have sullied the reputation of our state, and we have potentially caused enormous economic damage to the state of Kansas, all on the pretext that there is a problem with fairness in girls' sports in this state. There isn't. This will portray us as bigoted and discriminatory. And as a proud Kansan, I'm ashamed. I'm very happy to have voted no. Thank you.
Any further explanations of votes? Representative Oropesa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, or Pro Tem Speaker. For every child and adult of the LGBTQ community that is listening, I see you, I hear you, and I stand with you. And that is why I vote no.
Are there any further explanations? Seeing 10 hands, call still in order. 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 Representative Jacobs is excused. Seeing 10 hands, call still in order. Members will be in their seats. Representative Hoy for an explanation.
Mr. Speaker, I vote no. Trans Kansans, you are welcome here. I'm sorry we're putting you through this. This discriminatory law may pass, but ultimately, hate won't win. Please don't give up hope. Keep fighting to change hearts and minds. You don't deserve to sit on the sidelines. Mr. Speaker, I vote no.
Seeing 10 hands, call still in order. Representative Parshall is excused. Seeing 10 hands, call still in order. Representative Garber is excused. Representative Landwehr is excused. Representative Shu votes no. Not seeing 10 hands. Seeing 10 hands, call is still in order. Seeing 10 hands, call is still in order. Representative Collins is excused. Representative Penn for an explanation of vote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I vote to override the veto, this misguided veto. Who wants less racism? Who wants a level playing field? Should LSU's female champion, Angel Reese, give up her spot, her recognition, and her victory, a black woman, because a man decided to suit up with the females and go dominate the court and drive young black women and black girls, deprive them of their opportunity, both to have an equal playing field and a chance to change their stars in life, both for themselves and for their black communities? You want to say that you want to help black people? I encourage you to vote yes on this. I strongly encourage you. Vote yes. Override this veto. End racism. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Owens is excused. Representative Wahhabism. Representative Carmichael to be excused. Representative Wahhabism for an explanation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Discrimination is discrimination. Doesn't matter what color what color you are. Doesn't matter what your religion is. Discrimination is discrimination. I vote no to sustain the governor's veto. Thank you.
Seeing 10 hands, call is still in order. Okay, since the final member that is not here is excused all week due to his mother's passing, the Speaker has determined in accordance with House Rule 2508A that all reasonable effort has been exerted to secure absentees and declare that the call is raised. Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, with 84 having voted in favor and 40 against the passage of House Bill 2238, the same having received a constitutional majority, the required 2/3 majority is hereby declared passed.
Agreed.
Announcing the House herewith transmits the veto message from the governor, together with the enrolled copy of House Bill 2238, an act concerning education relating to student athletes, creating fairness in Women's Sports Act, restricting participation on women's teams to female students, providing a cause of action for violations of the act, which was received on March 17th, 2023, and read on March 20th, 2023. Message from the governor regarding the veto of the House Bill 2238. Quote, as I've said before, we all want a fair and safe place for our kids to play and compete. That's why I support the Kansas State High School Activities Association, which was set up to ensure nobody has an unfair advantage on the playing field. The legislature should let the association do its job. Let's be clear about what this bill is all about. Politics. It won't increase any test scores. It won't help any kids read or write. It won't help any teachers prepare our kids for the real world. Here's what this bill would actually do. Harm the mental health of our students. That's exactly why Republican governors have joined me in vetoing similar bills. This bill would also reverse the progress we've made in recruiting businesses and creating jobs. it would send a signal to prospective companies that Kansas is more focused on unnecessary and divisive legislation than becoming a place where young people want to work and raise a family. Therefore, under Article 2, Section 14A of the Constitution, I hereby veto House Bill 2238, unquote. A motion was made that House Bill 2238 be passed notwithstanding the governor's veto by a vote of 84 yeas and 40 nays, the motion having received the required 2/3 constitutional majority of the members elected or appointed to the House of Representatives voting in the affirmative, the bill has passed. The House non-concurs in Senate amendments to Senate substitute for House Bill 2058, requests a conference as an appointed Representatives W. Carpenter, Kessler, and Hoy as conferees on the part of the House. The House announces the appointment of Representatives Avercamp, Howell, and Meyer as conferees on House Bill 2094. The House announced appointment of Representatives W. Carpenter, Kessler, and Hoy on as conferees on House Bill 2014. The House announces the appointment of Representatives Hoheisel, L. Williams, and Shue as conferees on Senate Bill 17.
On a motion to accede, Chair recognizes Senator from Johnson, Senator Thompson on House Bill 2058.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate accede to the request of the House for a conference on House Bill 2058.
For the motion, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Conferees part of the Senate, Senator from Johnson, Senator Thompson, Senator from Shawnee, Senator Cluse, Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Fauskido. Motion to accede, Chair recognizes Senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson on House Bill 2002.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate accede to the request of the House for a conference on HB 2002.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Conferees on part of the Senate, Senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson, Senator from Montgomery, Senator Peck, Senator from Douglas, Senator Holland. Chair recognizes Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 2238 is the Fairness in Women's Sports Act that protects girls' athletic opportunities by ensuring that only biological females compete in girls' sports. The veto message of the governor having been read, I move HB 2238 be passed, notwithstanding the governor's veto. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
You've heard the motion. Are there questions? Seeing none, we're ready for final action. Clerk will call the roll.
Alley. Baumgardner. Billinger. Blasey. Bowers. Clays. Corson. Dietrich. Dahl. Erickson. Fagg. Fauskido. Francisco. Francisco. Gossage. Haley. Holland. Holscher. Kirshen. Cluse. Longbine. Masterson.
Aye.
McGinn. Olson. O'Shea. Peck. Peterson. Petty. Pittman. Pyle. Reddy. Reichman. Schallenberger. Steffen. Straub. Sykes. Thompson. Tyson. Ware. Warren. Wilborn.
Has every senator had an opportunity to vote? Do we have whereabouts on Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Fauskido? Call's been requested. Need 5 hands. 5 hands. Senate's under call. Sergeant will close the doors. Senators will be in their seats. Clerk will call the roll.
Dahl.
Senator from Finney.
I would love to change my pass to yes, but I really have a problem with the K through 6 because this has nothing to do with fairness in women's sports whatsoever. But I will pass. I will change my pass to a yes.
Fascudo. Haley.
Current preliminary count is 26 in favor, 11 opposed.
Mr. President, I've been in this situation before, oddly, a couple of years ago. The concerns that I had then and the concerns I have now, I know that it's time to vote not for an EOV, but the senator from Finney sort of alluded to the concerns I have beyond the very fact is that the children that are involved in here is a real concern. It's a real concern that this is a part of the bill. I'm not as conflicted on the rest of it, and my constituents have made clear during the campaign last year that was expressed in commercials and otherwise how they too felt about this particular issue. I'd be very comfortable, frankly, in working towards a clear ban on adults. But I'm voting no because we should not be, I think, punishing children or putting children in a very difficult way where it's really not going to make too much of a difference when they're in some intramural sports. To have and to add and to pile on like that is a little beyond the pale. And I would probably be more inclined to support this measure based on what I've heard from my constituents and from Kansans, were it not for that one particular point, so I'm a no.
Longbine.
Mr. President, I apologize for being a little late to the party. I want to make sure I know what I'm voting on. So it is House Bill 2238 and is a veto override.
This is, motion to
A
override.
yes vote is an override and a no vote is sustain the veto?
That is correct.
I vote aye.
McGinn.
Mr. President, I'm going to vote aye, and it's because I had an overwhelming majority of my constituents tell me that that's what they wanted to do. But I believe their aye vote is just focused on one thing, and that is we don't want men playing against girls in high school basketball or swim team or volleyball or whatever. And that's what the campaign was about, to focus on. We don't have a horrible problem here in Kansas. I would have liked the NCAA figured this out and trickled down to our high schools. But the part about this bill that is most egregious to me, and I hope this body comes back and adjusts it, we do not need little kids in this bill. Those kids, just because of one parent thinks little Susie, she's able to run faster than my kid. And now, how are we going to figure it out? Everybody says it's a birth certificate. I don't think you have to go give your birth certificate to everybody freely. So how else are we going to figure it out? And it's going to be a personal inspection. And my concern for those little kids who should not even be having to worry about this issue, because really they should just be running like little beehives on the soccer field and having fun. But now we're going to do this physical inspection, and then I believe that that child will always be questioning themselves. Why did this happen, Mom, Dad? But to confirm, Mr. President, I will be voting aye.
Call is raised. Further changes or explanations? Senator from Johnson, Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I vote no, and I don't think this is our job to be deciding what kindergartners do and don't do. And we see the sports federations making decisions. Swimming, you have to have had a transition at age 12 if you want to participate in swimming now. So the things that we heard that we all thought were horrific has been addressed. NCAA also addressing those. Soccer also. This is Holy Week, and it's a week, if you are a Christian, Jesus was crucified. And what we are doing is crucifying a target of our population, and I vote no.
Would you like your mark spread on the journal? So ordered. Senator from Wyandotte, Senator Petty.
With her permission, if she writes them, I'd like to join the Senator from Johnson on her remarks.
So ordered. Seeing no other further changes or explanations, clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. (28 in favor and 12 opposed to House Bill 2238. Two-thirds majority having been reached by the Constitution, the veto is overridden.